Transparency is not about restoring trust in institutions. Transparency is the politics of managing mistrust. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. On the 17th of January, on the 11th of January 2017, the EU made a special announcement. The EU said that Sri Lanka has completed all the requirements needed for it to be granted the GSP Plus concessions. Now, what does it really mean for a country like Sri Lanka? 6 years following suspension of the GSP Plus concessions to Sri Lanka, does it mean that we have got the GSP? Where does the country stand today? What will happen in the next few months? Will this be a silver lining as far as this government is concerned? To discuss all this and more, we have three eminent personalities in the studios this evening as well. Our topic of discussion today is transparency in economic affairs and the business climate in Sri Lanka. Let me introduce you our guest this evening. Joining us this evening is Mr. Kesaralal Gunasekara, former Deputy Mayor of the Devil Mount Lavina Municipal Council, also the former Chairman of the National Lotteries Board. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Mr. Gunasekara. Also joining us this evening is no stranger to the show, has joined us a couple of times, have been very vocal about Sri Lanka's economic policies as well as the country's way forward. Dr. W. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Nice to have you on board as well, Dr. Vijayawardena. Also joining us this evening is, again, no stranger to the show, Mr. Rohan Maskorala, CEO Shippers Academy of Colombo and also the former Secretary General of the Joint Apparel Association Forum. A very good evening and welcome to the show, Mr. Maskorala.
Nice to be here.
Let's start off tonight's show with Dr. W. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Dr. Vijayawardena, you write a very interesting article today titled GSP Plus may be restored, but Sri Lanka has to act fast to harness its full benefits. What does it mean? Have we got the GSP Plus concession or have we not got it?
No, Samir, even though the government has announced that they have got it, we have so far not got the GSP Plus position because what has happened is that the European Commission, based on a report prepared by the technical staff, has made the recommendation that Sri Lanka can be elevated from the present standard GSP to GSP Plus. We are already enjoying the normal GSP from European Union, but the European Commission as well as the Parliament as well as the Council has the right to question it for a period of 4 months. So what it means, Samir, is that at least it might take another 6 months time for European Union to restore GSP Plus to us. But within that period, if there's a political turmoil and if we are reversing the current progressive steps taken by the government with regard to human rights and good governance, probably we may not get GSP Plus from EU. So that is why I have said that it might take time or it may be restored. But the reason, Samir, is that we have already lost 6 years since the termination of GSP Plus to Sri Lanka in year 2010.
Dr. Vijayawardena, I just want to interrupt you for a second here. Good governance, democracy, accountability, human rights were some of the concerns made by the EU. Yeah. Does it mean that Sri Lanka has fulfilled all these aspects?
In terms of the technical report submitted by the technical staff, there are 27 such conventions a country will have to satisfy. Sri Lanka has by now, within the last 2-year period, satisfied all the 27 conventions. Of course, these conventions, Samir, are all ILO and UN conventions, and some I have seen some critics saying that there are 52, but that 52 number is a wrong number. Those 27 conventions are all prescribed to the rest of the world by United Nations and the International Labour Organization from time to time, and Sri Lanka is a signatory to all these conventions. So therefore it's not a strange thing for Sri Lanka. What had happened was that in year 2009 Sri Lanka failed to give a firm assurance that Sri Lanka would implement those conventions without a failure, and that was the reason for EU to terminate the GSP Plus to Sri Lanka.
You speak about the conventions, Dr. Vijayawardena. What does it really mean? Does it mean that it's going to hamper the sovereignty of a sovereign nation like Sri Lanka, adopting these conventions in
Well, we have already, as a nation and as a member of the UN and as well as ILO, we have already signed that Sri Lanka would be implementing those conventions, not today, some year, for a long period of time, because some of the conventions had been passed by UN as far back as 1960s. So Sri Lanka had been a signatory to all these conventions. The matter is that the government has to give a firm declaration that it would implement them without failure and without attachment of any particular restriction to any of those conventions. And that particular assurance was not given to the EU in year 2009. That was the reason why it was withdrawn from us year 2010. But after the new government was voted into power in 2015, within the last 2-year period, the government has given this assurance, and the EU is not satisfied with the assurance given by the government.
Is it GSP Plus, Dr. Vijayawardena, politically motivated?
Politically motivated within Sri Lanka, but of course if you look at the rest of the world, there are many countries which are benefiting from the GSP Plus. There are 13 countries in all today, and all these countries are getting, they are benefited out of that. And what matters to us is that European Union has taken upon itself the responsibility for introducing good governance and rights and all those things on the countries that would be receiving this benefit from them. So that is what is at issue today.
Thank you very much, Dr. W. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. This evening, we will also be talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, which Donald J. Trump is to scrap from the system. We'll be talking a little bit about that as well tonight on the show, as it's very important. On the 20th of this month, Donald Trump would be taking oaths as the President of the United States of America. What does it hold for a country like Sri Lanka in the subcontinent? We'll be discussing a little bit about that as well tonight on the show. Also joining us this evening is Mr. Rohan Maskorala. I move my attention to Mr. Maskorala. Mr. Maskorala, a few months ago when you joined us, we spoke about the EU lifting the ban on fishing exports in Sri Lanka and how Sri Lanka would be benefited. However, it materialized several months after. GSP Plus concession, how long will it take to materialize?
Well, as per my understanding, it's 2 months. It can come within 2 months or 4 months maximum period from the European Parliament. So they can decide to give it within 2 months after the 11th submission, or it can go for another further 2 months and decide on the final decision. So effectively by May we should have it.
Brexit vote, London going out of the EU. Will we really reap the benefits of getting the GSP Plus?
Yes, Brexit process is not yet triggered. This year it's supposed to be triggering out from United Kingdom. So that process will take another 2 years. And beyond that, we still don't know when exactly Britain will be moving out of the European Union as per trade terms. So until that time, we will certainly enjoy to the United Kingdom. And the good thing is that at the time when if we are having the GSP Plus, we may be able to negotiate something with UK also specifically for a bilateral arrangement if Brexit happens within that period.
Mr. Maskorala, silver lining as far as this government is concerned, a lot of criticism has been leveled against this government as far as good governance is concerned, with regard to transparency is concerned. And this comes as a bang as far as this government is concerned as well again. Where do you see the next few months as far as the apparel sector in Sri Lanka is concerned? You were the former Secretary General of the Joint Apparel Association Forum. Is it really a silver lining, or is it another complication for a country like Sri Lanka?
No, not really, because we already enjoyed this for 5 years. And until 2009 where the problems came in, we didn't have a problem. Everybody was happy. The apparel industry, after losing the multi-fiber agreement, actually started growing rapidly. During the GSP Plus period, we saw annual average growth of about 18% in the industry. And after losing temporary suspension, we have now seen it to coming down to growth of about 5-6%, whereas our competitors who are entering with zero duty from Bangladesh have grown many-fold to the European Union, including Vietnam and now Pakistan also. So I think it's a positive sign as far as the apparel industry is concerned, because our buyers straight away get a 10% discount, and we are a reliable destination for them for sourcing as long as the price is right.
Mr. Maskorala, one of the issues that politicians today are not speaking about is the fact that by the year 2020, Sri Lanka will no longer be eligible for the GSP Plus. Why? Because the World Bank clearly indicates that GSP Plus is available only to low-income and lower-middle-income countries. And then come 2020.
Upper middle-income countries. So now we are at $81 billion around. Our estimate is we will have it till 2022. Because by the time we reach $90 billion, it will be probably 2 years down the line after we get it, and then we will have a 3-year window period sustaining that 90 billion or above GDP. So our estimate is 5 years, which is a reasonable period for us to develop and graduate into a next level of industry.
You said 2022 we will be eligible for the GSP Plus as soon as Sri Lanka automatically has to exit the GSP Plus. If there is a change of regime by the year 2020, what will happen then?
Well, it all depends on how we have performed, as Governor said, former Deputy Governor said. It depends on how we have performed on the conventions, whether we are going on the right direction. It doesn't have to be implemented everything, but if the European Union says that we are taking the effort to go in that road of the right direction of law and order, human rights, environment, then newly elected government won't see a problem if it continues. But if things turn a different direction, then they might again do an investigation to Sri Lanka and decide to suspend it. I don't know that.
Mr. Maskorala, you say when a newly elected government takes over, are you saying that this government won't be re-elected to power?
I don't know that. You said 2020, so it's a new government anyway, whether it's the same people or not.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maskorala, for joining us this evening. Going in the right direction, we will be speaking to our panelists this evening about whether Sri Lanka is going in the right direction, or is it not taking the right path. Also joining us this evening is Mr. Kesarral Gunasekara, former Deputy Mayor of the Devila Mountain Municipal Council, as well as the former Chairman of the National Lotteries Board. Mr. Gunasekara, I want to ask you a question, very simple. What is going on? Is it precise enough for you to answer, or must I be more precise?
You mean to say the country, or?
Country, the Lotteries Board. You want me to be more precise?
I would prefer if you are a little bit more
What
precise.
is happening with this increase to 30 rupees a lotteries ticket? People are going on the streets. They are saying, give us the benefit as well. There is a finance minister who is saying, no, 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 that's not going to work. We will get new agents. What is happening to Sri Lanka? What is going on?
Well, I must be fair. Thing is, there is nobody from the Lotteries Board here at this forum, and hence I may have to play the devil's role of the devil's advocate as well. Now, I feel, in fact, I just pointed this out to Dr. Vijayawardhan as well. I feel that somebody has made a small blunder with regard to the levy of a 5 rupee charge on each ticket. It's supposed to come as an excise duty or as a customs duty, or it's excise
duty.
It's a duty. It's a tax.
Yeah, tax by the government.
Now, you need to understand that both lotteries, whether it is Developer Lotteries Board or National Lotteries Board, they work according to an equation. If the revenue drops, then the price payout, the agency commission, everything drops. So in this situation, what has happened is the government has imposed levy. I understand the government needs money. So they are raking up practically everything in order to ensure that they boost up their revenues. But in doing so, if somebody has made a mistake or the miscalculation with regard to this particular charge, then in that case it has serious repercussions. And that is exactly what has happened. I don't blame Lotteries Board because you can't blame them. The government has levied a charge and they have to act accordingly. Now what has happened is, as a result of the levy, there is a change in the equation and the agency commission also gets affected. No sooner the agency commission gets affected, then the lottery agents and the lottery sellers will be up in arms. You need to understand, the government needs to understand that their income should not be affected. That is fundamental. Now, if their income is going to get affected, then in that case, they are going to agitate. And that is exactly what has happened. Somebody has to go into this matter, rework the whole equation, and then decide, at the same time ensure that the revenue that the lottery agents are getting is not changed, as well as the price payout. Both, you have to work out with both, because you need to understand that if the price payout of the lottery is reduced, then the people lose confidence in the lottery. That can happen. Therefore, the price payout also has to be retained, plus the income of the lottery agents. If somebody can work into that and then decide what changes should be made now, I'm sure this problem can be sorted out.
Mr. Gunasekara, you said at the start itself that you are going to play the devil's advocate as well, but let me play that role for a minute also. Mr. Gunasekara, thinking from the government's perspective, they need money. You said that as well. They need money. Why not increase it to 30 rupees? The government is going to be in the winning side.
It's not the issue of increasing it to 30. I never said anything like that. What I said is the levy of 5 rupees. That's the issue. No sooner, when you sell a ticket for 10 rupees or 20 rupees, there are certain percentages that have to be paid out. The agency commission, the price payout, all those things. Now those get affected no sooner you come out with a charge upfront of 5 rupees. So the Development Lotteries Board or the National Lotteries Board does not get a revenue of 30. They get a revenue of 24 odd, because there is a VAT and in BT as well. So when they start off is 24, then the entire equation changes. The price payout gets affected. The agency commission gets affected. Everybody is up in arms. Simple as that.
Does that mean that the revenue collected eventually would go down as far as the government is concerned, because the people would not go out there and pay 30 rupees to buy a ticket?
No, that's the pricing of the ticket as to whether it should have raised to 30 or not is a different question. Maybe people might buy. At the outset, there will be a drop, but it will pick up. But the charge of 5 rupees, that's the issue. Not the increase to 30 rupees. It's a charge of 5 rupees.
Transparency, is that something that you see in this government, Mr. Gunasekara?
Well, if you compare the past, I would say that the government has come a big way, I would say. The GSP plus, the ban on fishing, then the goodwill of the West. There weren't the goodwill of the West, whatever anybody says. That was not there in the past. In those terms, yes, we have. But at the same time, there is a group that seems to be trying to destabilize the country. And that group, pardon me for saying that, includes the media as well. I'm being very fair. When I say media, I'm specifying the fact that if you take the media, take the daily news segment of any channel, I call it a teledrama. I call it teledrama. Everybody wants to watch the news. Why? Sensation. News item, news worth is very limited. You need to understand that if you go on in this direction, the world gets a bad message, and nobody's going to come and invest in this country. Very simple. We need to understand that we have to change. The media institutions need to understand that they have to change their whole outlook with regard to whatever they are trying to air. Because Now, I will give you two examples if you do permit
Very
me.
quickly, I'll give you around 20 seconds. If
Right.
not, we can go in for the Q&A, then
Two,
pose a question to you.
the Hambantota issue. The Hambantota issue by the workers. What was the role of the media? Portraying the incident of some attack by an officer. Fair enough. What about the damage that the workers did to the country? The insurance premium shot up for 3 weeks, and the country had to bear all that. Nobody talk about that. Why? This is what I feel that the media needs to understand. If you are going to show every agitation, every demonstration on national television, you can't move forward now. The country
Thank you very
cannot
much,
move forward.
Mr. Kesara Gunasekara, a former Deputy Mayor of the Dehiwala Mount Municipal Council, as well as the former Chairman of the National Lotteries Board of Sri Lanka. Mr. Gunasekara said about goodwill of the West. We've received the goodwill of the West. But what sort of impact has it really created on Sri Lanka? Have you got FDIs, or is it just getting closer to the West and distancing the other countries? What does it really mean? Tonight on the show, we'll be discussing on that as well. Giving respect to what Mr. Gunasekara said about the media, we as a channel, we as a network also have a responsibility to show what exactly is going on in the country. That is also the responsibility of the media. People have the right to know, and that is what democracy is all about. So let's open the floor for questions from our journalist. On to my right is Nadim Majid, as always.
As always. On to my right and asking to I always ask.
Too many questions. And also on to my left this evening is Chaturang Haparachi. On to my far left is Charita Fernando. Charita, I thought for a minute I forgot your name. There you go. So let's start off with you tonight, Charita.
Okay. Thank you, Sham. I would like to direct my question to Dr. Vijayawardena. Now, the Prime Minister is quite bullish about 2017 as being the year of investment. But now, looking at the situation in the government, Atturaliya Ratnathero said he's going to become a independent MP. Then we saw a few weeks back Priyanka Rajaratne quitting as a deputy minister. So there seems to me that there is some uncertainty, there is some instability setting in. So with this backdrop, do you think the government's economic plan, attracting more investment, could be realistic if the coalition government cannot manage different situations or instigations, the opposition, etc.?
Yeah, Charita, now if you go back to last year, our foreign direct investments have significantly come down from around $650 million in 2015 to $300 million in 2016. So as far as the foreign investments are concerned, there is a decline. And what the Prime Minister is thinking in 2017, it appears that he is not worried about the foreign direct investments. He is planning to have investments locally. And if you look at the two factories, Volkswagen factory in Kuliapitiya and the tyre factory in Horana, both appear to be investments made locally without foreign exchange coming into Sri Lanka. And I watched the Face the Nation 2 weeks ago. The chairman of BOI said that he is not worried about foreign investments, he is worried about investments. What we have to keep in mind is that if we can have investments, worthwhile investment in this country, that will help the government to come out of the present economic crisis. But not today, because the whole investments will take at least 2 to 3 year period to bear fruits. And if we start investing today, probably by year 2019, 2020, we may be reaping the benefits. And what matters to us today is that whether the government is going to provide the necessary incentive system in order for the local investors to invest in the country. So that is where we have to ask the question, because we must have a consistent policy package. The government will have to be very mindful about the rule of law, that we will apply the rule of law. They have to protect the property rights of the people. and at the same time they have to mobilize those investments. So if we go by those primary considerations for investments to take place in any economy, what we have to say is that probably what the Prime Minister has announced may be a wish, and which we have to recognize as a wish.
But we also see recent media reports of some investors gaining concessions over others. Some may be largely undue or maybe lavish. So what is the overall message that goes to investors outside, whether, in terms of a level playing field?
What would happen, Charita, is if you give unnecessary concessions to one particular person, all others might be agitating for the same. So what matters is, finally the government will have to end up in giving the same concessions to other investors also, because in any society, when you pick up one person and give him a better treatment, rest of the people in the society also might ask for the same treatment. So government has actually opened up a door which it may not be able to provide for all the people in the country, because it's just like giving a blanket concession to every investor in the country.
Mr. Masakorala, this was referred to in the weekend newspapers as a sweetheart deal that was given to a prominent businessman. Do you agree? Do you think it's a sweetheart deal? As someone who's from the business community yourself, would you expect to be given the same level of treatment, the same incentives?
Well, I don't know the nitty-gritty of why this was done or how this was done, but it seems that, as he said, government is thirsty for various kinds of investments, and depending on the what's coming out from various parties, they are selectively giving benefits. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but given the country's situation now, we are in a bit of a bad financial mess as far as I know. So whether it's the lotteries or investments or all that, so there may be mistakes made in that sense also.
But you said that the government is thirsty for any kind of investment. A thirsty man will drink even contaminated water.
Possible.
Is this contaminated water?
I don't know, but it's possible.
It's
possible.
Mr. Gunasekara, your thoughts? Do you think it's contaminated water? Do you think that our government, the thirsty man in this metaphor, is drinking contaminated water by giving out sweetheart deals?
Well, technically, there should be consistency. When the government does not have consistency in its policies, you have a problem. I have seen that. I have pointed this out on many occasions with regard to so many organizations that have come to this country, where in certain instances large concessions were granted to them, which I felt was not required, but they were granted. This is why I say, if there is no consistency, then you have a problem. So the government needs to understand that.
You talk about consistency. There is, you mentioned in your opening remarks about the need to go back and rework the pricing of the lottery tickets, the issue with the lottery tickets. Now that is something that has been consistently done, which is going back and reworking, and then His Excellency the President steps in and intervenes. We saw this happening with the traffic fines. The government makes a decision, then some factor arises that causes them to go back and rework it. Now, so with the lotteries issue as well. When you have that level of consistency in a negative sense, how do you measure the success of this government, especially when it comes to policy making and decision making? Because this government did come in with the promise of greater transparency, greater openness, and having more public consultation in the decision making process. But it seems that that public consultation portion of it has been conveniently left out.
Maybe the government is in a hurry. That could be one reason. But I must, in fairness to the government, I must say that if you consider the previous period prior to 2015, things have improved. Many people would say that transparency is not there, but I don't agree on that. I still feel that there is transparency. But you must understand, it is not an easy task to go back, reverse everything. It will take time. For me, good governance, 15 years down the line.
Dr. Wijewardena, if you take a look at what's being said in the political arena with regard to the GSP Plus, we saw the former president coming forward and saying that the GSP Plus did not have any benefits when it was there, and that it going away wasn't a problem. Did the GSP Plus actually have the benefits that we speak of, or was it another, another word that we use just to be happy about it?
Chaturanga, we have to look at the loss. I think I can remember Mr. Maskorala addressing the Sri Lanka Economic Association in 2014. Yes. Because at the time the country lost GSP Plus, the president at that time had been advised by somebody that the total loss would be around $200 million, and president was willing to give those 200 millions to the apparel industry. But Mr. Maskorala, when he addressed the Sri Lanka Economic Association, he came out with the figure of 1.2 billion, the total loss per annum. That's number one, Chaturanga. Number two is if we had GSP Plus, the apparel industry would have modernized itself, which would give us substantial benefits for a long period of time, giving us an opportunity, competitive edge to compete with countries like Bangladesh. So we have lost that also. So financially 1.2 billion. Then non-financial terms, we have lost the market to Bangladesh now. So when we think of all these factors, I think the former president would have been ill-advised by somebody that the loss would be confined to just $200 million, and that could be accommodated by the government of Sri Lanka. Number two is that even after he had been advised, I don't think the government delivered these $200 million to the apparel industry. It was just a promise. And the apparel industry had to suffer. And we can always see, Chaturanga, now the Bangladesh, which didn't export any garments prior to 1980, has now exported about $14 billion worth of garments to EU alone. And Sri Lanka, total export earnings is less than $10 billion. So that is where we are suffering. So,
in addition to that, Dr. Wijewardena, now we know that there are 751 members in the EU Parliament, and that this is going to be taken up in their agenda soon, as the government tells us. But there is a little political drama happening there as well. We need the support of certain nations for us to receive it at the end. And with this lobbying firms for the diaspora there and the LTTE connections there, do you think that there is a chance for Sri Lanka to actually go through this and get it at the end?
Chaturanga, 90% we have now passed the test. It's only balance 10%, because balance 10% is just a routine where these issues should be raised by EU Parliament. But probably, as Rohan said, by about, say, June, my estimate is by about June, we may be getting it from EU.
But Mr. Maskorala, a quick question to you now. Being positive about all of this, looking at this in a positive way, let's say we receive GSP Plus once again, where should we look at? What should the industries of the country do? Are we ready for, to battle it out with GSP Plus in our hands once again? What positivity is there for us to look at?
Well, when I speak to the industry, they are very positive, because we have, for example, forget about the apparel which I represent, we are very, very positive about it, because we have got our own budget proposals to go into the lagging areas. The problem is not the GSP Plus, we have a labor issue. That's the biggest problem in the western province. So probably the apparel industry will move to the lagging areas like Uva, East and the North. That's most likely. But look at the industries like fisheries, which had a 18% duty, landed duty. We completely lost that business to Europe. Bicycle assembly and revalue addition and sending, those companies stopped here. Right? Tires, certain tire products used to get. Right? So there were about 7 or 8 HS items which we were growing. So when I talked about this $1 billion, I didn't just talk about the apparel industry. I talked about at that time's growth of the apparel industry to Europe was about 18% per annum. Right now it's dropped to about 6% or 5%, 4%. So that's the impact difference. Yeah. Plus the other industries catching up and new industries. So there was an opportunity cost for 6 years for this country. If you add up all that, it's about $1 billion of revenue that if we compare with what we've seen in Bangladesh growth, going up to $25 billion and $14 billion to the European Union. That's a good comparison of zero duty countries competing.
Mr. Maskoral, many organizations, many government sector organizations in Sri Lanka have begun operations overseas, like Kenya, for an example, Cambodia, for an example.
That's natural, because
Would they be
one of the reasons is
regretting
labor.
their decision?
One of the reasons is labor. One of the reasons was this, whether this was coming, so they had to relocate certain product lines to countries where they can use the facility and enter the European market. It's a massive market. We can't just sit down and wait. So as entrepreneurs and businessmen, you look at other avenues, go and partner or joint venture and access markets.
But would they now regret that decision?
Not really, because there are certain still line items and products that can be manufactured in those countries where our labor cost is high. So with those products we can't. For example, even apparel, the top apparel exporters are within Europe also. Germany is an apparel manufacturer. Right. There are European countries, top European countries still doing manufacturing of apparel products. So it's a level of value addition and level of the value of the product. So it depends on what line item you can compete. So you are given HS code and you can't compete with the 10% price difference, that goes out. So that goes to Bangladesh and Vietnam and they get that whole portion. That's what we lost.
Mr. Masakoral, now I would like to shift your attention to the Hambantota port deal. Where do you think the government went wrong with was it the negotiations or was it the way they communicated the whole deal to the public? Because you get the same company running the deep water port terminal in Colombo and they are doing extremely well.
Yes.
What is your take on
extremely well is a very subjective word, Charita.
You can ask Mr. Masakoral.
Yes. Well, Charita, I've spoken to you about this matter. I think government has been extremely weak in its communication to the people, its marketing, its explanation. So I've told to government also this. Nobody talks about East, West, South terminal, which is CICT being operated, is given 85% to the Chinese. We never saw protest in this country. They are taking 85% of every $100. I am not against CICT. I was never against SAGT. I am for privatization, but not the percentages that they have given. I am not happy with what happened. It's a gold mine, we are given 85%. We are talking of Hambantota where still there's no business. This was a gold mine that was there. It was ours. We could have got a loan from the ADB, long term, or some other place, very long term, and settled. At least the SLPA should have got 33%. And we are paying for the breakwater of this port. So we have muddled up privatization. Unfortunately, I must say, I expected privatization to come from the UNP government. But all privatizations of terminals happened during the SLP-led governments in 2001 and the last regime. So nobody came onto the streets. I don't know. But when it comes to Hambantota, I have an opinion on that, but we are not talking of Hambantota. But the thing is, it's about explaining to the people what it is. Right? What are the difficulties you are having? Do you know that there were three requests for proposals for Hambantota advertised during last regime and this regime once? Nobody came. Nobody came with good proposals. They are talking of asking for higher bids. What are the higher bids? Nobody came. So what are we talking? So ultimately, whether that government or this government had to put a deal with China. That's what happened. So it was bad explanation.
Mr. Gunasekara, you spoke of getting closer to the West. That's a positive sign as far as this government is concerned. Has it come at a cost, Mr. Gunasekara?
No, I don't think so. Because when you're dealing with the West, I don't think so. Because if you take China, I would say it's at a cost. But when you're dealing with the West, it's not so.
But what have you got so far from the West? What have you got so far from the West in terms of FDIs? It's just goodwill.
What about the major exports
going? Want goodwill?
What about the major exports going to the US?
Hasn't that happened in the past as well?
Of course. USA have been there right throughout. If we lose them, we are in trouble. We must win them over. But at the same time, we must understand that these other countries which are operating in Sri Lanka, they must be controlled to some degree. And we have to understand that labor is a big issue in this country. People, the mindset has not changed. The attitudes have not changed. People do not want to work. Very recently, a person came to see me and I asked him, he wants a job. I asked him, what's the salary you want? 30,000 rupees, he says. I said, who the hell is going to pay you 30,000 rupees? And he just out of the school after O-levels. He wants 30,000 rupees. That's where we stand.
What
We
did
have,
you
a,
offer
we have a problem. And as long as we don't change their mindset, the government does not get involved in giving them some training in some trade or whatever it is, we will still continue to have this problem.
Mr. Gunasekaran, what did you offer that young boy who was just after A-levels?
I told him, I said, look here, first of all, get into some trade, learn something. I said, we have opened a vocational training center. You can study there free of charge for 1 year. I will provide all that. Why don't you go? There are so many courses available.
Right, isn't that the
We run the best institute in this country. We run the best vocational training center in this country. The Lalita Tulat Mudali Vocational Training Center. The best in the country. I said, go there, we'll provide everything for you all.
So
but the question is this, you must understand, when we were schooling, our teachers taught us, no sooner you finish O-levels or A-levels, if you have 2 months or 3 months, go and work somewhere. 2 things, you learn, at the same time you get some money. Today, we don't have that. I mean,
but the advice that you've given this boy is to go to a vocational training institute.
Pardon?
The advice that you gave to this particular boy in question was to go and join a vocational training institute.
So he need to learn something.
So he's not going to get paid.
No, the question is this. As long as he's going for a smaller salary, lower salary, yes, there are jobs. I mean, there are thousands of jobs. 15,000-20,000 rupees, there are so many jobs available. Now, I have come across instances.
What has the Able Mountain Municipal Council per se been able to generate for the youth of the area?
You got to understand that we don't generate jobs. Huh? The council is not, the role of the council is not that. The role of the council is to provide services. But we can always support any organization with the infrastructure operation. That's all that we can do. We cannot create jobs. We can't. We are not involved in that trade. But you must understand, in this country, we have a serious problem where the youth, the government has to start a program where after O-levels, if somebody wants to branch off or learn something, provide all that so that they learn things.
It's not the fault of the student per se. It's not the fault of the student, so it's the fault of the government.
It's a fault of the government because the thing is, the government needs to change everything and show people, look here, you have to get involved and learn something. If you learn something, your jobs are available. If you don't learn, there are no jobs available. And everybody wants to get into a government job. Why? It's very cushy. You get a pension, you do half the work, that's it.
Is that why people join politics as well, Mr. Gunasekaran?
I don't know. I'm sure you can do a study. Your channel can do a good study on that.
For sure. Indeed, Mr. Gunasekaran, a cushy job indeed for politicians. It seems like it. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the third round of Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion is transparency in economic affairs and business climate.